Brett Newski live in the studio with Wet Pavement, and I'll give him a couple of seconds to put down the guitar and get over here to his chair.
Oh, I'm in.
Mic over in front,
my mic?
so we can finally say good afternoon and thank you very much for coming today.
Oh, thank you, Steve.
All right, so we've got to get to the homeless in Asia creating an album story, but let's start before that. Let's start with where you're from and your musical background.
Chicago area in the USA. So
Cubs or White Sox?
Brewers mostly.
Okay.
I see like Milwaukee Brewers. I figured no one knows where Milwaukee is, but I see kids in Korea like run around with Brewer baseball caps.
Right on. Old Prince Fielder fans, I guess.
Prince.
So, how did the move to Asia come about, and when did it come about?
Oh, completely on a whim. I don't know. I had a very serious band in the States, and we kind of split, and it was kind of getting the travel bug, as it happens for some. But yeah, it did what I guess anyone would do, and just moved to Asia.
Where was the first country that you went to?
I landed in Saigon, Vietnam. Really liked it. Traveled around for 3 months, and like played show in like every place. And at the end, I wasn't really ready to go home, so I just kind of picked Saigon because it was my favorite city. There's a little bit of music going on over there, so it was just kind of moved there on a whim after living in limbo for 3 or 4 months.
So you kind of came in this direction with the plan of making music over here.
Yeah, it was a very rough like DIY mission. It was quite grimy and like staying on couch surfer couches or whoever would put me up in foam mats and stuff. But some shows were booked ahead of time, and some were kind of more spontaneous. On like some friends would get together on a rooftop in Hong Kong, and we'd play music. And it's a good way to connect and unite with people that way. The smaller crowds and the smaller house shows.
Now, I mean, you've worked with some big names. I imagine if you stayed in the States, you would have found yourself on a pretty good musical career path. You've played with, correct me if I'm wrong, OK Go.
Yes.
You played with Third Eye Blind. You played with Cage the Elephant, you played with Marcy's Playground. So I'm thinking that, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking, well, if you've played with these huge names, why not just stay there and stay in that career? Was it something in the music industry that made you want to say, I can't do this, at least for a while?
It's just being in a town that I love very much, but being in the same town kind of for too long. And somewhere I'll always go back to and want to live at some point again, but it was just like, time for a kind of a new territory. When
you got over to Vietnam for the first time, I mean, if it were me, and I had played with names like OK Go, and I had played with names like Third Eye Blind or Cage the Elephant, I would probably be using that to my advantage, saying, hey, listen, book me for a show. You know OK Go, right? Well, yeah, I played with them before. Was that something that you wanted to remove yourself from, if you know what I mean?
A bit, yeah. I mean, it was, a few years back in a different band, basically. So it's our band was near in the end. We had a great run, a really good run, and we were all ready to move on and go to law school or finish school or move to Asia, whatever we were going to do. So it just came down to like we had a deadline, and there wasn't a whole point in considering like 100% of your musical efforts and ambitions in a project that you knew was done in 6 months. So. With the band splitting, I just really wanted to travel, and it was just pure accident. I ended up living in Asia, but I love it.
Right on. So when you got to Vietnam for the first time, I mean, how does it go? Were you just interested in traveling around and seeing the sights, or were you constantly looking for shows to play?
When I got to Vietnam, I was just looking for work, in any capacity. It was quite, like, the first 3 days there, I was, like, living in hotels and stuff, and I was like, I almost, like, went home. I was like, it's been too long, I'm getting lonely. But then I started meeting people, stuff started to click, a few shows started to pop, I formed a band, and I have a, like, very reliable, awesome band with some...
How long did that take?
We just really got going. We had our first show back in Ho Chi Minh City, like our home opener. It went really well. Like it's a cool place for music. It's small, but it's starting to boom. Like it's a very blank canvas, and I think people are up for anything at this point. They're not sure what yet, and as long as it's like lively and rollicking, rock and roll, I think fits just fine in there. So
very cool. So you said you got the bug to get out of your small town in the States. Did you get the bug in Vietnam to get out of there and maybe go to somewhere else pretty quickly?
I think Vietnam will be home base for a while, just because we can kind of live there. The band's there. We're recording a record there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It gets a little stuffy at times. You know, there's motorbikes like running you over every half second.
Gotcha.
But that's kind of the charm of it. So
well, we have more chat coming up with Brett Newski and some more live music as well. And I didn't talk about the homeless aspect of the trip yet because I wanted to save it for a little bit later on in the program. Like I said, more coming up with Brett Newski on the other side of a break. Chatting with Mr. Brett Newski today, and we'll get back to some live music. But first I should mention that if you're interested in checking this interview out and watching this live performance, you can find that at TBS EFM's digital magazine. Brett, I'll ask you to look at the camera to your left and wave, no, not the camera to your left, camera to your right, and wave hello. Say hello to the listeners out there. Right on, so let's get back on topic now, and let's talk about how the whole home, I mean, honestly, it's a bit shocking when you read it off a piece of paper. Homeless for 6 months and created an album at the same time. So can we define, is it the typical definition of homeless? Maybe you can talk about how it came about. In
a sense that I, didn't have a home. Yes, it's technically homeless. I was not, sleeping in too many cardboard boxes. I did sleep in a few vans and stuff, but I was usually able to pull stuff together just with really nice acquaintances who would host a musician through town. I feel like that's the cool thing with traveling musicians. Like we're always like fairly broke and on the same mission, so they offer up the couch and you hit them back when they come through your town.
I've often wondered, because there's something romantic about that, right? And romantic in the poetic sense about sleeping, you don't know where you're going to find your next bed kind of thing, and being the starving artist. I mean, was that something kind of that you did on purpose so that you could have that certain sense of creativity or that certain mindset when you were creating the album?
I guess I never really thought of that and I didn't even think of making an album until I was like, wow, I have all this time on my hands, I'm writing a lot, I'm able to record in these weird little like hippie studios.
I was going to ask you where you did your recordings.
The hills of. I had this recorded with this old German guy in the hills of Pai, Thailand. He had like a little kind of hut with a room and a computer and a deck. I mean, it was all like very, in a sense, shoddy of how it was thrown together. But in the end, it really worked for what I was doing, for stripped down folk like road music. Like I wouldn't have wanted to do it in like a polished studio, nor would I have had the financial backing. But so, in a sense, yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm really happy I have an album at the end of it because I wasn't planning on it all coming together.
Folk influences go back to Dylan. Obviously, you looked very Dylan-esque when you walked into the studio today. You had the harmonica around the neck and the guitar on. But does it go back further? Does it go back to maybe the days of even Woody Guthrie?
Not so much. I mean, to be honest, I've never owned a Bob Dylan record, and I've always liked his aesthetic and the way he plays, and I'm very into like singers who like can't really sing in a sense, which is what makes them like who they are and what makes them great, and storytelling. So like guys like I don't know, there's a guy called Ezra Furman in Chicago who's just like kind of a a finicky voice, but it's like a lot of emotion and high energy folk music. So
right on.
Sometimes we call it folk Armageddon, just like balls to the wall.
I like the term folk Armageddon. Right on. So the album, I'm assuming, has the theme of going from stop to stop in these Southeast Asian countries, or am I wrong?
Yeah. It's not like a city by city, track by track, but it's very much kind of a time in limbo where I'm trying to figure out the next move, not having a plan. And writing along the way. So the theme is it's a road theme. It's pessimistic half the time, and it's positive the other half the time.
Pessimistic in what sense?
Pessimistic, just like, wow, why am I sitting in a pile of garbage waiting for a train in Bangkok? Or just like, why am I running from a pimp in the red light district of the Philippines? It's just like
stories that we can't talk about on the air, unfortunately. But again, I mean, is that because you did it on purpose, though? If you know what I mean, you must have known that you weren't coming over here to stay in 5-star hotels.
Oh, right.
Along the way, you know what I mean. So why question it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess the theme, as with most travelers is kind of to get lost on purpose, and that was the underlying mission of the whole thing.
Pessimistic in that sense, optimistic in what sense?
Optimistic, like I have no idea what's going to happen after this trek and after this record, but I'm just going to go try to play a bunch of shows and see what happens. And then, you know, moved to Saigon and found a little work in doing music and stuff. So I'm happy. I think I'm happier than I've been in many years.
You're in Korea. You're playing tonight at Club Freebird in Hongdae. That show's at 9:30 p.m. You can check out our homepage for information and directions on that. What brought the trip over to Korea? Well, you've only been here for a very short time, right?
Yeah, I have about a week in Korea. Some really loyal, great pals that I'm staying with brought me over, and then, you know, I try to play everywhere I go. So I booked up a couple shows, and with the help of some of you guys, thank you. And then, yeah, just been saving up for the weekend, laying low, some quiet before the storm. So.
Nice. What are your thoughts? This is your first time in the country, yeah?
First time. Yeah, I was. I got off the train last weekend in Hongdae University, and it blew my mind how everything's like nothing's built on a grid, and it's all like, you know, up and down and slanted streets and lights. It was like so much character, and it seems like there's a great art scene. So. Yeah. Very
cool. So you're going to play another live song for us right now. Can you tell us a little bit about it before we get to it?
In Between Exits. This is a
title track from the album.
This is the title track from the album, and it's just kind of about leaving one town, leaving one landmark in life, so to speak, and you know, limbo between the next, says the title. So I'll go strap on the harmonica.
All right, I'll give you a few seconds to get over there. This is going to be with the harmonica around the neck. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Again, we're listening to Brett Newski. It's an incredible story, leaving his music career behind in the United States and coming over to Asia to create an album, all the while not knowing where he's going to sleep the next day. Live in the studio, Brett Newski.